Hello everyone and welcome to the weird, scary and horrible parts of humanity. The death penalty. It's one of the most emotive subjects for humanity and something that everyone has an opinion on. 55 countries have the death penalty and 23 of these countries have not used the death penalty in the last 10 years and are thereby considered de facto abolitionists. According to Amnesty International, the countries with the most executions in 2023, the number one is Iran with at least 853 executions, Saudi Arabia is second with 172, and then the United States of America with 24 executions. The number of executions that take place in China is unknown, but it is estimated to be in the thousands. In Japan, there are 14 crimes that are under capital punishment, with executions carried out by long drop hanging, but it does not use the death penalty frequently, with 98 individuals executed since 2000. However, in Japan, the average person spends between 5 and 7 years on death row. 25% of people have been on death row for 10 years or more, and many people can spend up to 30 years or more on death row. But one, Iwao Hakamada, not only broke Japanese records, but became the world's longest held death row inmate in March 2011 by the Guinness World Records, having been sentenced to death on the 11th of September 1968. But he even smashed his own record and was on death row for a combined 56 years before being acquitted in September 2024 during a retrial by the Shizuoka District Court before being confirmed as innocent in October 2024. Hakamada was born on the 10th of March 1936 in Yuto in Shizuoka, Japan. On the 1st of July 2005, Yuto, along with other towns, was merged into the expanded city of Hamamatsu. He was one of 3 children and had an older sister, Hideko, and an older brother, Shigeji, who died in 2001. Hakamada ended up becoming a featherweight boxer, with his first match taking place on the 6th of November 1959, and he fought in a total of 29 matches until 1961, becoming as high as 6 in Japan in his weight class. In total, Hakamada won 16 fights, with one by knockout, lost 11 matches, all on points, and had 2 draws. Retiring from boxing, he started working for a missile manufacturer, which was owned by Fumio Hashiguchi. On the 30th of June 1966, a fire took place at the home of Fumio Hashiguchi. Helping to extinguish the fire, Hakamada took the bodies of Hashiguchi, his wife, and their 2 children, all of whom had been stabbed to death. There were a combined 40 stab wounds. Combined with that, about 200,000 Japanese yen were missing from their home. At the time, to put this into perspective, the average wage in Japan was 490,400 Japanese yen. The murders shook Japan because of their brutality. Hakamada was automatically the lead suspect and, according to Kyodo News, was arrested in August 1966. Japanese police began interrogating him for a combined 264 hours over 23 days to obtain a confession. These confessions lasted for as much as 16 hours at one time. During these interrogations, he was denied water and toilet breaks, and police allegedly kicked and clubbed him to obtain a confession. He would later tell his sister Deko that they had him crouch on the floor, kicked him, shouted at him, and then wrenched his arm, putting his thumb onto an ink pad and drew it to a written confession, ordering him to write his signature. Beyond his confession, police based their evidence on a pair of pajamas that he owned, which had a tiny amount of blood and gasoline on them. In a letter to his mother in February 1967, he would state, "God, I am not the culprit. I scream every day. I shout this message with the hope that it will be carried by the words of Shizuoka and reach people all over the world. They say life is full of ups and downs. They say the last one to laugh wins." Police also argued that in August 1967, nearly 14 months after the murders, 5 pieces of bloody clothing were found in a tank at the missile factory that Hakamada worked in. The clothing allegedly belonged to Hakamada and the blood on the clothing belonged to the victims. It was alleged that Hakamada had murdered the family in the clothes found at the missile factory before changing into his pajamas to commit the arson, explaining the blood and gasoline on the pajamas. It was alleged that Hakamada had used a fruit knife, but supporters insisted that this would not have survived the 40 stabbings, and his legal team argued that the clothes, which were medium, would not have fit him, but the prosecutor argued that the clothes had shrunk in the missile tank. The local media was against Hakamada and declared him guilty before a result was handed down by the Shizuoka District Court. The Japan Pro Boxing Association argued that this was a prejudice against Hakamada as a boxer. While the Shizuoka District Court discounted part of his confession, he was found guilty on the 11th of September 1968 and sentenced to death by the three-judge panel, with the panel headed by Noimichi Kumamoto. In a letter directed to his brother on the 26th of January 1973, Hakamada would write, "I too am on death row, though I was falsely accused. I must live with the sadness that permeates my entire being, and there are times when the unsettling fear of the unknown of the execution of my death sentence makes my heart grow colder than I can ever describe. My whole body trembles as if I was attacked by the winter cold, but I will win." He appealed his sentence to the Tokyo High Court and the Supreme Court of Japan, the highest court of Japan. However, the Supreme Court of Japan upheld his death sentence in December 1980. A frustrated Hakamada obtained new lawyers after the Supreme Court of Japan upheld his death sentence, and by April 1981 he had launched his first appeal for a retrial. It was determined that the alleged weapon, a fruit knife, was the wrong size to produce the stab wounds, that the door used to enter the house was locked, and that the bloody pants found in the missile factory were too small for him. Backed by the Japanese Federation of Bar Associations, his lawyers concluded that the first trial had failed to establish that any of the clothing belonged to him. In 1983, Hakamada wrote to his son, stating, "I will prove to you that your dad never killed anybody, and it is the police who know it best, and it is the judges who feel sorry. I will break this iron chain and return to you." In December 1984, he tried to stay positive despite his seemingly hopeless situation, stating, "My sense of victory is purified and deepened when I accept solitude, although solitude is certainly painful and difficult for me. It is not meaningless. If I can ensure and humbly accept solitude, I am sure I will suddenly realize the meaning of a deeper victory." However, in August 1994, the request by the Japanese Federation of Bar Associations to rehear his case was denied by the Shizuoka District Court. In 2000, an attempt was made to extract DNA from the bloody clothing by Okayama University professor Hideo Ishizu, but no DNA was detected in the clothing. One of Hakamada's defense lawyers stated, "Because 34 years had passed since the event, the bloodstain was old and no DNA could be detected." Of his time on death row, Hakamada spent a combined 30 years in solitary confinement, and this took a severe impact on his mental health, as while in solitary confinement, he was not permitted to talk to guards and rarely allowed visitors. An anti-death penalty activist visited him while he was in solitary confinement, and he claimed that he would become the omnipotent God who had absorbed him, taken over the prison, and abolished the death penalty in Japan, which wasn't the case, as Japan still maintains the death penalty and utilizes it to this day. In August 2004, the Tokyo High Court denied an attempted retrial of Hakamada. However, as the 2000s rolled along, there became increased anger at the holding of Hakamada on death row for so long and increased belief that he was innocent. In November 2006, 500 supporters, including Japanese boxers Koichi Wajiyama and Katsuo Tokashiki, submitted letters to the Japanese Supreme Court asking for a retrial. In March 2007, the head of the judge panel that sentenced him to death in 1968, Kumamoto, came out in support of Hakamada's innocence, stating that he doubted the authenticity of Hakamada's confession and believed that he was innocent. In July 2007, Kumamoto tried to visit Hakamada in prison, but this was denied. In the same month, Kumamoto submitted to the Japanese Supreme Court a statement in support of a retrial of Hakamada, stating, "My feelings about Mr. Hakamada remain the same. I believe he is innocent." He would then resign from his position as head judge for guilt of what happened to Hakamada. In November 2007, Kumamoto launched a 360-page document arguing why Hakamada was innocent. However, the evidence presented in this document was rejected by the two other judges on the panel that had convicted Hakamada. Kumamoto stated to journalists in November 2007 in Tokyo, "I have thought about his trial for many years. I have felt sadness and disappointment over this." On the 25th of March 2008, the Japanese High Court denied a request to rehear Hakamada's case, with one of his lawyers, Hideo Ogawa, stating that it was a regrettable decision handed down without much thought, and the Japanese Federation of Bar Associations called the decision an extremely deplorable miscarriage of justice. This only increased the anger at the incarceration of Hakamada, with a charity rally organised by the Pro Boxing Association gaining 1,300 supporters. Of those to support Hakamada were the Japan Pro Boxing Association, Amnesty International, American boxer Reuben Carter, who had spent 20 years in prison for a murder he didn't commit, and actor Jeremy Irons. In the same year, a DNA test was redone on the clothing utilised to convict Hakamada, and the DNA test showed that the blood on the clothing used as evidence did not match the DNA of Hakamada. On the 15th of April 2010, 57 members of the Japanese Parliament formed the Federation of Diet Members to save the condemned Iwao Hakamada. This was chaired by Seishu Makino, who is currently chairperson of the Save Tibet Network. The Federation petitioned and presented a petition for the release of Hakamada to the then Minister of Justice, Keiko Chiba. However, this was denied. In the same year, the documentary Box, the Hakamada case was released, analysing the case of Hakamada. It was directed by Banmei Takahashi and nominated for the Grand Prix des Amériques at the Montreal World Film Festival in 2010. Further DNA tests in 2011 supported that the blood on the clothing did not match the DNA of Hakamada. On the 14th of March 2012, a blood sample was taken from Hakamada, and it was found that his blood did not match the blood sample on the shoulder of the T-shirt found on the murderer's clothes. However, throughout 2013, the prosecution disputed the DNA tests, which kept Hakamada both on death row and in solitary confinement. In March 2014, Hakamada was released from prison and solitary confinement and granted a retrial by the Shizuoka District Court, with the court noting that there was reason to believe that evidence had been fabricated in the original trial, and keeping Hakamada in prison while awaiting a trial at the age of 78 was incredibly unjust. While the prosecution would appeal the decision, it was denied. Amnesty International would state that time is running out for Hakamada to receive the fair trial he was denied more than 4 decades ago. If ever there was a case that merits a retrial, this is it. Indeed, Hakamada would become a poster child for the charity to present the flaws of capital punishment in Japan. Upon his release, his sister Hideko Hakamada went to see him and expressed delight, telling supporters outside the Shizuoka District Court, "Thank you very much. I only want to say I am happy. That's all." Immediately following his release, Hakamada was sent to a hospital in Tokyo to check for diabetes. He would settle down in Hamamatsu. However, despite being released while awaiting his retrial, Hakamada was still guilty in the eye of Japanese law and still officially on death row. But there were numerous questions regarding his perceived guilt, with Cornell Law School stating that Hakamada may have served time for nothing at all. In June 2018, the Tokyo High Court overturned the ruling that had Hakamada released. However, due to his age, he was 82 at this time, the Tokyo High Court ruled that he shouldn't be forced back into prison and solitary confinement until the case is heard by the Japanese Supreme Court. However, prosecutors urged the Supreme Court to reject Hakamada's appeal in August 2018. It wasn't until the 15th of March 2023 that the Tokyo High Court ruled a retrial for Hakamada. In response, Hideaki Nakagawa, the director of Amnesty International Japan, stated, "This ruling presents a long overdue chance to deliver some justice to Hakamada Iwao, who has spent more than half a century under sentence of death, despite the blatant unfairness of a trial that saw him convicted. Now that the Tokyo High Court has acknowledged Hakamada's right to the fair trial he was denied more than 50 years ago, it is imperative that prosecutors allow this to happen. This means they must not appeal against today's ruling and prolong the limbo Hakamada has been in since his temporary release 9 years ago. Rather, they must allow this retrial to take place while Hakamada is still able to participate in the proceedings." On the 26th of September 2024, Hakamada was acquitted by the Shizuoka District Court more than 56 years after he was first sent to death row, and on the 8th of October 2024, the prosecution confirmed that they would not appeal the verdict of the Shizuoka District Court. After the verdict, his supporters cheered "Banzai" outside the court, which means hooray in Japan. His sister, Hideko Hakamada, stated that, "When I heard that, I was so moved and happy, I couldn't stop crying." Amnesty International would describe it as a pivotal moment for justice. The result of the Shizuoka District Court was finalized on the 9th of October 2024, and Hakamada was now a free man after more than 56 years on death row. This ultimately gave rise to questions if Japan should keep using the death penalty and its effectiveness as a deterrent against crime. However, abolition of capital punishment in Japan is unlikely to come to pass, with an Ipsos survey in 2021 showing that 74% of Japanese citizens favoured maintaining the death penalty, and a 2019 survey by the Japanese Cabinet Office found that 80% of respondents believed that the death penalty was necessary in some cases. On the 21st of October 2024, Police Chief of Shizuoka Prefectural Police Takayoshi Tsuda apologized to Hakamada and his sister Hamamatsu. His love for boxing never dissipated, and on the 22nd of November 2024, he attended a bout at Tokyo's Korakuen Hall alongside unbeaten WBC bantamweight weight champion Junto Nakatani. The Japan Times reported on the 7th of December 2024 that the Tokyo Bar Association had selected Hideko Hakamada as recipient for its Human Rights Award for the year of 2024. But this raises one last question. Who murdered Hashiguchi and his family? This is still a mystery, and, as of now, it is an unsolved case. Thank you for watching. Please do yourself a favour and hit that subscribe button and the bell icon to be notified of when new videos come out. Also, why not hit that like button and leave a nice comment? It helps more than you know, and your support is truly appreciated. Until next time, stay awesome, stay classy, be kind to everyone you meet, have an amazing day, and remember, the truth is always more interesting than fiction.